And we are back, folks. Another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider coming off a weekend where Michigan really impressed, where JJ McCarthy in particular really impressed. And that's noteworthy considering who one of the major visitors was last weekend, and that was Jaden Davis, who we will talk about, but lots of other hot sort of recruiting topics and news to get into with the best crew in the land, the best crew around, the crew over at the Michigan Insider, joining me as they do every week. Starting off first, Mr. Steve Lorenz. Steve, how are you?
Good, guys. Getting through this, see Iowa scoring 7 points, losing to Iowa State the next week. It's like, when's Michigan's first real, I know Kinnick's a tough place to play, but it's been kind of funny to see Michigan's opponents and recruiting rivals kind of falter to begin the year. So,
yeah, we'll get into that. And you look, Kinnick is always a house of horrors for Michigan for whatever reason. Maybe it's that way for a lot of, but for Michigan, I can't help but think 2016 it cost Michigan a playoff shot. That game, whether it's Wilton's injury or the loss, one of those things doesn't happen, Michigan probably is in the playoff. But 10 points in 26 quarters for Iowa. I don't know that it's a house of horrors this year, Brice. How you doing today?
Doing good. It's funny how we talk about recruiting momentum, and in the summer, everyone's freaking about Michigan and saying, what are they going to do? How's this class going to finish? And now you're looking at some of the top teams they're going against on the trail and starting to falter. So we'll see what happens.
Well, let's start off right there, Steve, because you brought it up quite aptly before we came on. And I guess I should mention, listen, the crew over at the Michigan Insider, the support has been through the roof. If you haven't joined over at the MichiganInsider.com, what are you waiting on? $1 get you in the door. Once you become a full subscriber, you also get access to Paramount Plus. You cannot beat the bang for your buck over on the MichiganInsider.com, whether it's football, basketball, recruiting, analysis, second to none is what we offer over at the MichiganInsider.com. But Steve, we spent a lot of time back in the spring talking about the recruiting machine that Notre Dame is, and that hasn't changed. Give them credit. Marcus Freeman, heck of a recruiter. Tommy Rees, heck of a recruiter. Al Washington, heck of a recruiter. They are a really, really good recruiting staff. Their recruiting department and team and all the bells and whistles that they put up with, waffles and what did they call it? Leprechaun Day or whatever they call it, Brice. I don't know what they call it over there. Pot of Gold Day, I guess. Right? Why do I know that? Because they did all these campaigns, right, where they're top of mind. They're organizing these events. So they got the recruiting thing down. But what did we say, Steve? Try to drag out some of these recruitments as long as you can. Those that you can't, just, keep them hot, keep them warm so you can come back on them down the line, because let's wait to see if those guys can coach. Let's wait to see if the season sort of brings them back down to earth a little bit, thinking that it's going to be Ohio State. But it wasn't Ohio State, Steve. It was Marshall.
Yeah. So here's the thing. One game is not going to change probably any recruitment. The problem is, now look at what Notre Dame's schedule looks like the rest of the year after they lose a game like Marshall and starting quarterback for the entire season. Buchner with a shoulder issue or whatever. They still got North Carolina, BYU, Stanford, Clemson. There's still, you see a lot more losses on that schedule now, and that's when they start to add up. That's where you're going to see teams like Michigan, and honestly, maybe Michigan more than anybody, right? That's what we talked about all offseason, that's who Michigan's primary rival has been, is Notre Dame, right? They recruit a similar type of kid, more on the field, off the field type guys to kind of fit the program. So, yeah, if you're Michigan staff, I got to imagine they're at least putting out the feelers. I know Charles Jagusa, the top 100 lineman out of Illinois, is a guy I expect them to at least take a pulse with, see where things are at there. I don't know. This is where maybe Sam, Brice, you guys might have a better idea. When do you do that? Do you do it now after a loss like Marshall, or do you maybe let the schedule play out a little bit more? Take a couple. That's why I said that at North Carolina next weekend, right? Like, how do you keep bank? Do you hope they lose another one down the road and it gets even worse, or do you do it when things are really look really bad like they do right now, right? That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and it's an interesting strategy, and you wonder if these are the kinds of discussions that are going on in the building. But if it's me, the contact, you've been keeping these guys warm, right? You've maintained conversations with their family, the moms, the dads, the kid. Not every day, not all the time like you would if they weren't committed, right? Not all the time like you would if they were committed to you. But it's one of those things where if you maintain contact over time, where you're just checking in, hey, I'm just checking on you, Charles, right? I'm just, seeing how you're doing, Cam. I'm just, and then when this happens, it's not just this opportunist dropping in, which I guess is fine too, but it's not just this opportunist dropping in saying, hey, are you thinking of looking around? No, you've been maintaining the relationship all along. Hopefully that's what Michigan, and I think they have. I think they have been doing that with a number of guys, right? So, whether it's commitments or how about this one? Because they had Jeremiah Love on campus, man. So one of those things where that's a guy that's still up for grabs that, I know in Michigan circles, in some of the recruiting circles, the talk was it's Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Michigan. And those two teams, Brice, suffered embarrassing upset defeats last weekend.
Yeah, I don't even think this stems just to Notre Dame. I mean, you can go down that commit list. You're going to see Jane Osbury, Peyton Bowen, just a couple guys that they've really been recruiting extremely hard before they committed. And I got to bring it up because it's the elephant in the room. Dante Moore had tweeted out during the game, and I'm not saying he's flipping, but I'm saying he is watching. That is a fact. He is definitely watching. And then he deleted a tweet. Basically, it said JJ and Donovan Edwards is a crazy duo. That got a lot of people's, feelers and, what's going on? But at the same time, the more you see Michigan win, the more you see these other schools lose, you can see more opportunities. And this is a formula that worked perfectly for Michigan last cycle. Because if you think Darius Clemens, Keon Saab, Eric Moore, all these guys they weren't even their pipe dreams at best. Next thing you know, they're in the class. Mason Graham was committed to Boise State. Zeke Berry, Arizona. So you're looking at guys, and like you said, Sam, the biggest thing I would do is just keep the iron in the fire. Just like you said. Don't make it seem like your hair just, hey, good to see you. How you been? You knock on the door on Thanksgiving. You haven't seen that family member in years, and all of a sudden you hear they're cooking certain food. And, hey, how you been? You don't want to show up on Thanksgiving like that. You want to be
dude's getting drafted, and all of a sudden everyone shows up at the party, right?
Right. I mean, come on. You got to show up at Easter, Christmas. You got to be at all the holidays, all the events. But this is something where I think Michigan can take advantage of. The schedule definitely helps them, where they can kind of rack up some of these wins. And because, like you said, and Steve said, when is that first test for Michigan where we could definitely see a loss? And they're not bringing in a lot of the top guys, these past recruiting weekends, but they are doing their due diligence on keeping in touch with the guys, keeping tabs with them. And we talk about, again, coaches getting fired. Scott Frost just got fired. And next thing you know, Hayden Moore, on linebacker out there in Utah, is committed to the Cornhuskers years from Michigan. So this is going to be a pattern. This is going to be a trend that we're going to see carry on throughout the season and going forward.
Yeah, man. And look, the key is iron in the fire is a great way to put it. Because now you aren't that it's a great analogy you came up with. You aren't that person, that coach, that school that just showed up when it looks good. Oh, you're having problems. Now I'm here. No, don't do that. And I think that you can, whether you look down at LSU, I know they've maintained contact with Jaylen Brown, and all of a sudden, look, Jaylen Brown's taking a visit to A&M now, right? So you do that. I know for a fact, having spoken to, I won't get into who, having spoken to people in Dante's circle, say, hey, man, these schools, look, he's committed, but there's no reason why these schools shouldn't keep recruiting him. I mean, you just never know. So I think that you'd be wise if you're any of these schools, not just Michigan, to be maintaining contact with all of these players. And I think Michigan has been doing that because of the experience that you laid out, Brice. And so will it reap dividends? I don't know. So getting back to Steve's question, what would the call be? Assuming you've been maintaining contact with Charles Jagusa and Peyton Bowen and Jaden Ausberry, right? Well, when they lose to Marshall, that's when you start turning the conversation from, all right, hey, how you doing? Just checking in, to, hey, are you thinking about taking a visit? That's when now you start talking about, can you get them on campus, right? That, I think it's a nice, as long as you've been around, you can start having those conversations now. And I would be surprised if Michigan isn't doing that at this point. And I'm really interested in the Jeremiah Love angle, right? That is one that quietly Michigan has been lurking. There was some talk that he was on the verge of committing to Notre Dame, and it didn't happen. Right? I know that they're really feeling Klink. They're really feeling Ron. There's a great appreciation for Jay Harbaugh, who's done a great job in St. Louis. That entire staff was doing a really, really good job with Jeremiah Love. You got to get him to a game. So we'll see what happens along those lines, but absolutely warrants mentioning the struggles that these teams are having, and whether or not that's going to open some avenues or reopen some avenues for Michigan in recruiting. Time will tell on that. They didn't need to reopen an avenue with some of the guys that made it to campus, though, Brice, like Caden McDonald, a guy from down in the Peach State. Michigan's been doing a lot of work in, and he came up, had himself a great visit.
Yeah, so this is a guy, 6'3", 310, 315, probably their top defensive line prospect at this point in the 2023 class. From the same school as DJ Turner before he actually transferred to IMG. And so going into this visit, he had several connections with Michigan. First off, he trained with Chris Hinn, another fellow Georgia native guy, played at Michigan a couple years ago, or I guess last year. DJ Turner, I just mentioned, he's friends, with the family, so he knows the family extremely well. And the other biggest thing is Jesse Minter and Mike Elston, not much really talked about in terms of recruiters, maybe more Mike Elston so far instead of Jesse Minter, but both of them have been putting, full-blown foot to gas and just going all for this recruitment. And the biggest thing I heard, too, Jim Harbaugh is making a, appearance and really big effort to say, hey, you're a guy we want, you're a guy we need, and you're someone that could help us in the future going forward. He took his official visit this weekend. He came up here, arrived, I want to say, Saturday morning. He was actually picked up by Mike Elston and Jesse Minter. That's just to show the love, kind of how much they are prioritizing him. Plus, biggest thing there, too, they had one official visitor. That was him. That's all they brought in. And I think that was by tactic. I don't think that was a good strategy by them. I don't think that was something that, they just couldn't get guys in because it's a night game. I think they could have definitely got more guys in. But that just shows how high up on the board he is. I know he had a really good time. Spent a lot of time, like I said, with the coaching staff, plus the players. His player host was Kenneth Grant. They both have pretty similar personalities, especially having seen both and talked with them in person. I kind of got the vibe. So I could see how that was a good match and good pairing with him. And he got to see the campus, tour, hit some food spots. And, overall, I think this was a visit that helped Michigan check a lot of boxes. The biggest box they're working on right now is distance. Obviously coming from the Peach State, that's not the closest suitor for, in Caden McDonald's recruitment compared to like a Florida State, LSU, other schools he's looking at. But came up with Mom. Mom had a good time. Mom is definitely going to be a factor. Her voice is definitely going to be heard at the end of the day on where Kayden goes. And both of them really enjoyed the experience. He does have a couple official visits still to go. He's going to be at Ohio State this upcoming weekend. A couple other places he's going to hit. Clemson is a big school. But I was told right now, looks like Michigan and Florida could be two of the main teams to be in this race. I think Clemson, I won, count them out. Ohio State, obviously. And then Oklahoma's done a really good job in this recruitment, kind of being a dark horse as well. But overall, Michigan did everything they could. They rolled out the red carpet. And you just, at this point, got to see where the chips fall.
Yeah, man. Only official visitor, but not the only significant visitor, right? As another big timer on campus, Steve, and a guy who when we talked about him on the podcast after the barbecue, we told people watch Brian Robinson rise in the rankings. And it wasn't because he's this big Michigan recruit. I mean, you could see the kind of summer he had. It was the MVP at 2 different Michigan camps. I mean, you compare him to where he was physically last year. He's like 40 pounds heavier. You see videos of some of his workouts on social media. He's rocked up. You got all these schools from Bama to Georgia, A&M, all these schools all over the place coming at him. He's a big-time guy, and our analysts certainly agree as he is rocketed up the rankings, but still sitting right there as clearly one of the top schools on his list. And another great visit experience, Michigan with 2024 edge standout, Brian Robinson.
Yeah, so Steve Wiltfong, our director of recruiting, put in a crystal ball for Robinson coming out of this visit. I think a lot to that crystal ball, and see if you guys agree. I think the biggest reason that I give a lot of credence to this one in particular is because Ohio State has not offered him yet, right? And again, we're not talking about a kid that Michigan's rolling the dice on here out of Ohio. I mean, he like you mentioned, Sam, he's got Georgia, A&M, Notre Dame, Penn State. He's got 30-plus offers. I've always been of the belief Ohio State thinks an in-state kid is favoring Michigan. I think they're just going to abstain from offering him, period, to eliminate the perception that Michigan is beating Ohio State for a prospect.
Interesting.
Right? Don't get me wrong. There are guys that they both offer. Michigan's won some of those battles. But in a situation like this where, Michigan offered early, they've done a really good job, and it looks like they're probably being favored. I just think from a perception standpoint, I just always feel like Ohio State has maybe hesitated a little bit. Like, did Ohio State eventually offer Nolan Rumler? Like, I don't remember if they ever did.
I think they did.
It might have been late, though, I feel like.
Yeah.
I think like they might have come in late. But either way, that's something I've kept an eye on in this recruitment. I mean, he did. He camped there. He did visit for their first game of the season. Then he visits Michigan the next week, has a good visit. Michigan gets the crystal ball from Wiltfong. To me, that says that Ohio State is probably not going to be offering him anytime in the near future if Wiltfong believes Michigan's in the driver's seat there. So, but yeah, hey, Michigan doesn't. Who cares?
Right.
This is a kid you take it. Right? I mean, okay, keep your perception. That's fine. Michigan will take him all day. This is, Youngstown, we talked about Steve Clinkscale in this race being a huge ace up the sleeve. And we know what if there's a school, we've gotten to the point now that if there's a school that knows how to identify an edge prospect, it's got to be Michigan. They're not going to take we've seen them they've gotten some of the high ranked guys, but we've seen what they've done with some of the other guys. Robinson, more the former, more of a higher ranked guy with a lot of offers, but they're not going to just take a guy there. I mean, they're only going to take players that they think can really, really contribute, right? So it would be a great win if Michigan can eventually pull it off. It does feel like they're in the lead, though, at the very least, right? I mean, it feels like they've been trending there throughout the summer. So, it would be a great addition for them. It would give them their second edge because Mason Curtis is technically being recruited as an edge guy. Talk about a guy who's playing safety. That's how athletic they look for these guys at that edge spot. So would be a really nice 1-2 combo to start things off at edge in 24.
Yeah, man. Some great ground, some great tracks laid already in that recruitment. With the times he's been on campus, he's been coached by the coaches at camp, and the relationship with Steve Clinkscale. I mean, he said it, Brice, when he came, that same street. I mean, they go back. If I'm him, and you said, hey, maybe Ohio State isn't offering because, perception-wise. If I'm him, my perception is one of two things. They're slow playing me. Maybe they're thinking that they could just pop in whenever they want to with an offer. Or Larry Johnson doesn't have the kind of juice to get these offers across that he used to. Why am I thinking that? If I'm Brian Robinson didn't say, I'm just giving you how I would take it, because Larry Johnson says he loves Brian Robinson. Like he's all over him. I want you. You're my guy. But there's no offer, right? If I'm Steve Clinkscale, I'm certainly saying that. And maybe Clink hasn't said it, but if Clink hasn't said, Vince Morrow said, you guys know how Vince recruits, right? So for those who don't know, Vince is Kentucky's lead recruiter, right? He's their recruiting guru down there, and Vince pulls guys to Kentucky that you wouldn't expect for him to be able to pull. And I think that's who they're going head-to-head with, guys. I think they're going head-to-head with Kentucky in this recruitment, because Vince Morrow is Clink's cousin. He's from Youngstown, too. Same street, all that, all the same things that apply, the attributes that apply to Michigan in terms of connection apply to Kentucky and Vince Morrow. They've been there since the beginning. He's been on that campus multiple times. And this is a kid that I don't think is going to be wowed by, Bama, and, oh, man, A&M, and look at everything that's going on down at Georgia. Those schools, I expect him to take a look, take a gander, but I don't think that he'll be wowed by, the big-time profile that they have as programs any more than he's wowed by the profile of Michigan. I think it's more about, hey, you got a great mix. I know the coaches there. Look at their edge development, as you pointed out, Steve, and they happen to be a big-time institution as well. I lay that out, though, to say don't just assume that they're going to beat Kentucky, because Michigan and Kentucky, I think it's going to be much more substantive than that for this young man. So big-time recruit. You got him on campus again for a game. I don't think this will be the last time. And it was another thing. I don't know I know you guys caught it in Steve's story, Brice and Steve. I'm talking about Steve Wilfong's story. But the comment that Brian Robinson made about Jaden Davis, you remember that quote there, Brice, what he said Jaden Davis told him?
I don't have the quote right in front of me, but essentially.
He said, don't play against me, play with me.
Right. And so that's very telling. I'm not saying that's, something to come, but it could be,
But it impacted him, though. You remember we were just having this conversation about perception. I think I can figure out how he perceived that. Oh, man, he must really like Michigan, right? I mean, not to say that he's going to go to Michigan, but this is a serious threat for arguably the number one quarterback in that class, a quarterback who I went to see him say he is absolutely going to recruit. He's going to have the top class, the number one class in the country. That is a goal of his. And so we have an interview with his dad that we'll play after the break, where we talk about how important it is for him to be a class catalyst, so to speak. Now, will that shape his timeline or move his timeline at all? I don't know that. But it stands out to me, Steve, that he is on Michigan. He's on a Michigan visit and not committed to Michigan, but he's already planting the recruiting seeds with other kids that were on campus visiting Michigan.
Yeah, and why else would Brian Robinson even mention that in the interview, too, unless it made a really big impact on him, right? I mean, there's plenty of things you could talk about on a game day visit. For him to – I don't want to say Wilfong almost led the article off with that quote. I mean, that's how kind of striking it was. So, yeah, it's really trending. It feels like things are really things have looked pretty solid for Michigan for a while here in the Jaden Davis recruitment. But, yeah, the longer it goes on – I mean, he's back again already. It wasn't even a visit. Did we – right, Sam? When you went down and saw him, I don't think this visit was planned yet, was it?
It was not.
I mean, so this visit kind of just comes out of thin air almost. He's back on campus again already. Georgia's recruiting two guys at quarterback between Jaden Davis and Julian Sayin out of California. Michigan, Jaden Davis is the guy for them, like by far. So Michigan has that. Sayin may decide soon. If that goes in Georgia's favor, then man, because it still feels like Georgia. I mean, has he even been anywhere else? I know he's mentioned Penn State and LSU and some other schools, but I don't know how long it's been since he's been to a different school or watched. Didn't he go to Atlanta for the Georgia against Oregon? I think he was in the crowd or something. They can't host guys, but it just doesn't. It feels like it's been Michigan, Georgia for quite a while. But man, to come back up second game of the season after you were just up there at the end of July is that's a great little, to me, to go see Georgia play Oregon and then to go up to Ann Arbor the next week really feels like, it's going to be one of those two schools, but it feels like Michigan's made him a bigger priority and maybe could argue maybe done a little bit of a better job too.
Yeah, they've done a tremendous job recruiting him, recruiting his family. That stuck out to me when I was down there. It stuck out to me on the visit. You see some of the photos his dad is posting about the family photos and his younger son connecting with Juwan, which we talk about in the interview that you'll hear coming up. But, him coming back for a third time, I mean, it's a fortuitous bounce. People hated Hawaii a night game. If Hawaii was a day game, Jaden Davis isn't up here. So it was an opportunity that they were able to lean into to get him up to experience it, right? And it was a whirlwind. I mean, they flew up in the morning and basically come right over to the building and to the game. And they sit around all day or move around all day. I guess they were taking them around like they were like they were the princes of Zamunda, so to speak, right? They were the royal family, like you would a 5-star quarterback and that 5-star quarterback's family. But then after that, you got the rain delay. And so, they're hanging out and they're like, oh man, it's making the day so much longer. And then from there, they walk back in the stadium and all those people are there. It was an amazing representation of Michigan fandom. It's important to point one other thing that he brought up, though, just as an aside, and I'm curious you guys' take on it. He brought up unsolicited. We're talking about his impressions from the game, and he said, "Hey, we didn't like how they were booing their quarterback." Talking about K. Now, whether you believe they were booing Cade or booing the decision to play Cade and pull JJ in the second half of that game, whatever the reason, or they were booing the offensive line for giving up the sack, it was perceived as they're booing their quarterback. And it was not a good look. And you will hear his dad talk about that. Now, Steve, I don't expect for that to shape the recruit. I don't expect that to be the deciding factor in this recruitment. But, man, you just don't want to throw negative logs on the fire. You don't want to throw wet logs on the fire, so to speak. That's a wet log that is totally avoidable. That's one thing that fans can do is, man, just don't boo your old guys, right?
Or let alone boo the guy that led you to a freaking Big Ten title last year. I mean, give me a break. You're up 35-0 at this point. I mean, granted, and I think we made it clear. Probably 0.0001
right
% of the fans in the crowd were actually participating. But even here, a couple, it's just kind of odd. And it's like, just can't stay out of some fans just can't stay out of their own way with that kind of stuff. So, I agree, though, Sam. I don't think it's something that'll merit any serious discussion. They could probably turn on some Georgia games, too. I think Stetson Bennett got booed a few times last year, even early in the season, when it was either last season or whenever he was battling out with a job or whatever, because he was an old preferred walk-on. I remember him getting booed in some different scenarios. So, it's kind of one of those things that just happens at games. But, I mean, just the context, Michigan's case here against Hawaii, was really no reason for anybody to do that. And, like you said, wet log. They took the time to notice it, right? It's not, it's not as if it's, something to just totally sweep under the rug, but just, I got to assume Michigan coaches are aware and have probably taken steps to just say, it's just alcohol.
Right.
Blame it on something. No. So,
right.
Long day, night game. A lot of people, a lot of people that tailgate at like noon. Before a night game, they don't know what's going on by the third quarter. So I don't know.
Man. Yeah. So, hey, look, I didn't, as people will hear in the interview, I didn't ask about that. He mentioned it unsolicited. So it stood out enough for him to bring it up, but I do not think it soured them at all. So that was the third visit in 4 months. And the other thing, one of the real big takeaways, they're coming back for another game. They're coming back for another game. And so one of the things I dug into with him was like, do you guys need to see Michigan against tougher competition? And he was like, oh man, this is kind of like a setup. Right? I was like, no, I'm as you're looking at, if you're evaluating these programs and you're talking about development of quarterbacks, do you need to see JJ against better competition to get a better feel for that? And he said, we just want to see a better game. Like I think it'll be the Michigan State game that they ultimately. I think it'll be that game that they come back for. But he said we're coming back for a game. Now, that's going to be the biggest game. You want to see the biggest game on the home schedule? I suppose you could come to Penn State, but Michigan has made a habit of beating the brakes off of Penn State in Ann Arbor, right? I mean, I'm not to say that that's definitely going to happen again this time, but Michigan State is going to be a bigger game. So I anticipate that being the game that they return for. He does not say that, as you'll hear in the interview. He just says, well, we're coming back for a game. But I agree. I think Michigan's out front for Jadyn. They've done a whale of a job recruiting him, recruiting the family. Channing Goodwin, Brice, who I know you talked to, his teammate and the son of one of my classmates, Jonathan Goodwin. He's feeling Michigan clearly. Not to say that he's going to commit or anything, but I don't know what kind of vibe you get, Brice. I would pick Michigan as the leader for Channing.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Channing, at least Michigan, and they're taking the right approach with that recruitment. They're not resting on their laurels, thinking, Dad played at Michigan, he's just going to come here automatically. That's not the case. But as we've been stating, these kids keep coming and coming and coming up, and that can only help Michigan at this point. And so, biggest takeaway he gave me was, for him, this, I think, was his first game day experience at Michigan, as a recruit. So to actually see the environment, like you said, Sam, I think a lot of prospects were impressed with not only just the game itself, but all the fans that stayed. It was not like a 5-minute weather delay. We're talking like, downpour. It was a monsoon out there, and people still came in, and you looked at the stadium around there, and it was still packed. But obviously, the talk was JJ's performance. I mean, if you could pick, and I know this is going back to Jaden Davis, but if you could pick one game for him to see, is JJ's first start.
Yeah, man.
And not only that, he has a 93.8, PPF, whatever rating for quarterback, percentage-wise performance. And it's just like, could you have picked everything was there. Everything you wanted to see was there. The big throws, the running, around the pocket, stepping in, him taking off, just displaying all the different, features and different things you can show, and more of this new look offense. Whereas, last year was more of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust, let's just kind of pound the rock. Well, now it's starting to look like a Lambo, a little Ferrari with JJ back there. It's a nice sports car. You know what I mean? So it's just overall, I think they didn't, hurt themselves by any means. They definitely helped in both those recruitments. And going forward, that's a school you want to get very comfortable with and very good with. And obviously it went well.
And we've talked about that, the Providence Day, a lot for that very reason. And to that point, to emphasize it as we get to this break and then get to the interview with Mr. Jeremiah Davis, the father of Jaden Davis, the McCarthy connection. Like, that's real. And it predates Jaden being a Michigan recruit. They reached out to the McCarthys when, as I explained previously, they reached out to the McCarthys to talk about IMG as an option before Jaden decided to come back to Providence Day, where he was at as a middle schooler. He looked at the possibility of going to IMG, and that's when the families and the dads really started speaking and talking about it and getting advice. And Jadyn talking to JJ some. And so when he came to saying, you got a whole day to kill, who do you hang with? Who do you connect with? You reconnect with the McCarthy. So the dads are hanging out and the moms are hanging out and the kid. I mean, that's a real thing. And so to your point, Brice, then you go out and you see that guy ball out. That's just another feather in Michigan's recruiting cap. So you'll hear more on the Davis recruitment, this most recent visit, the impact that he hopes to have on recruiting somewhere. Maybe Michigan, who knows? We'll see down the line. But his dad sort of recapped the experience for us here on the podcast. We'll get to that on the other side here on the Michigan Recruiting Insider. Mr. Davis, I wanted to kind of touch base and kind of see what you guys thought of this latest experience.
Oh, it was good, man. Yeah, it was even with the rain delay. I guess it gave it Jaden and us more time to. Well, it was kind of aggravating to be honest, but it did give them more time to talk to players and all that stuff. And it was a long day for us, man. I'll be honest, it was a long day. We flew up that Saturday and got up early, flew up there, and then we didn't get to bed till about 2:00. Then got up and flew out. So, but other than that, but no, I mean, it was great, man. It's just that ran delay. It didn't really mess up anything from our standpoint. I mean, we still got to do a lot of different things, man, and I guess in a short period of time.
Did you guys get a chance to hook up with the McCarthys at all? I mean, obviously, I know their whole family had to be in town with him starting the game. You get a chance to connect with them?
Oh, most definitely, man. We talked about that beforehand. I mean, man, JJ dad, he said, I can't say what he said, but yeah, I made it a point that they had their own little. They took us to the parent little area, or whatever, and we got up, we chopped it up for a little bit. Yeah, his dad is cool as hell, man. He's like almost like family to us. So, my wife and his wife talked a little bit and we chopped it up, and then it started raining, so they rushed us out of there like we was the president.
So, hey, when you started talking to them, that wasn't even about Michigan, right? When you connected with them at first, the McCarthys?
No, that was on some whole different advice stuff. We was talking about some high school football type stuff, and then it's kind of ironic. It led to this, and hell, that was man, how long ago was that? JJ's been there. What, this is sophomore season, so it had to been like, you know what? It was Jaden's sophomore season. Yeah, it was Jaden's sophomore. Yeah, somewhere in early Jaden's sophomore season, and then from there we kind of kept in touch, and it's just crazy that how this thing came full circle and we got even closer. So
yeah. So what did you guys? I mean, watching them play, what did you think of the performance?
Oh man, I'm a JJ McCarthy fan. Man, that besides the football, but man, he's just a good kid, a good young man, I would say. Man, he's very respectful and all that stuff. Jaden loves him. They text back and forth, and I don't know, it was just a lot of mutual respect. And of course, I didn't know about JJ till Jaden was telling me, these kids, they follow, the quarterbacks and stuff. So Jaden kind of looks up to him, but before even all this happened, just follow him, because he was ahead of Jaden. So, nah, man, that dude he's special. He had a skill set. He's definitely a gunslinger, and he's smart about it too. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you got a chance to see the game day experience as well. I thought maybe people would leave after the rain delay, but everybody, stayed. What did you think of the atmosphere?
No, it was good. It was special, Juwan Howard was there. I mean, we've seen a lot of different folks, but it's kind of disappointing hearing people boo a kid.
Yeah.
That was like, yeah, that wasn't right, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I mean, I'll be honest. That's people not used to winning. That one right, man. Yeah, I'm a huge JJ fan, but that other kid, he took him and they did all that stuff, man. At the end of the day, that just wasn't right. I mean, because if it was my son, it'd be some. You know what I'm saying? I'm
I know
thinking
what you're
about
saying.
the parents and all that, man. That's just tasteless. Like, who does that? You know what I'm saying? It's just it's one to have a quarterback competition, and then it's another one just be damn right ignorant.
I hear you. So, yeah, man. So I'm gonna send you. We did a breakdown. I do a breakdown every week with Devin Gardner, former Michigan quarterback, and
Oh
he.
yeah, him and Jaden pals.
Well, man, he did like a whole segment on Jaden. I guess he had him at the Elite 11.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he did a whole segment on Jaden as a quarterback, impromptu. I didn't even know he knew Jaden at all, and he just started talking about him at the Elite 11 camp and how good he was and what he thinks of him as a player and how he ran into him again at Michigan. So I mean, did does Jaden did he talk to you about his Elite 11 experience? Does he remember Devin from that, or was it mostly kind of the interaction at Michigan?
I wasn't around him. I know he met him at Elite 11. Devin knows Jaden's quarterback coach. We had a conversation about that when I met Devin at the Elite 11 and stuff. How you about Jaden's quarterback coach. And but other than that, they just hung out, man. I think they exchanged numbers and all this other stuff. But him and Denard Robinson, they all hung out. They had the whole black quarterback thing going on.
Right.
Yeah, so nah, they all good guys, man. Yeah, it's all good guys.
So one of the things I remember you saying, Jaden talking a whole lot about was QB development. So I wonder, do you take much in that regard away from JJ's performance in this game, or do you need to see him against better competition to get the kind of feel for it that you guys are looking for?
That's a setup question, man. Come on, man.
I mean, it's real talk because everybody keeps saying hey man, it's Hawaii, it's Hawaii, it's Hawaii.
Yeah.
That's what some fans, some pundits say. I'm curious what you guys say as people who are evaluating that aspect of Michigan.
I mean, JJ is talented, man. Yeah, would you want to see that against Ohio State or Michigan? Yeah, but he's gonna build up to that. I mean, the kid got to get his feet wet somewhere. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, you either got it or you don't. And if he would came in and dropped a goose egg, which I didn't expect him to do, then he dropped a goose egg. But that kid, man, the way that they got him prepared last year was sticking him in the games with limited experience and all that stuff, right? That helped propel him to where he's at now. So it's not like sticking a kid in. I don't look at the Hawaii game like it was his first start or his first time touching the field. No, he was. I think I recall him playing in, against Michigan State, and then everybody want to blame him for the fumble and all that stuff. But he played in some key moments. That helps with the development of the kid as well, all through last year. So that helped push him to where he's at now, and all that does, because it was against Hawaii or whoever else, but all playing against Hawaii does is help mentally preparing for the next game and prepare for the next game. And once he gets into playing, the conference schedule, I think he's going to be lights out. I mean, it's just smart football. Why would you stick a kid in there and start him against Ohio State,
Right.
man? And he hasn't even built his confidence up to that. That's wrong.
But man, you going back. Y'all really been watching if you going back to last year. For sure, man, for sure. So So how about this? When it comes to the other recruits that were on campus, find it very interesting. How kids talk. I'm not saying read anything into this, but I don't know if you know the kid Brian Robinson. He,
The
Steve,
DN.
yeah, the DN out of
Yeah.
Austintown Fitch in Youngstown, Ohio, and he was enamored with Jaden, talking about, man, that's a big time guy, and it was impressive that he was at Michigan. Then he said that Jaden told him, "Hey, man, you want to play with me, not against me." Now, again, not reading anything into that, but it speaks to him already starting to kind of plant some recruiting seeds for wherever he goes. Is that going to be an aspect of his timeline thought process, that he is going to be a part of a class so he can recruit a class? Have you guys talked about that?
I ain't gotta talk about that. Jaden talks about that on his own, but I can tell you that my son is confident in where he goes. He's gonna have one of the top recruiting class because people drawn to him. He's a leader in personality and stuff. So, I mean, he's going these places. I'm pretty sure that they already recruiting each other. I think Jaden told me there's like a 24 app these texts going around these kids got, man, they deep in it. So they already kind of recruiting each other, man. Y'all don't know the half of what these kids doing. Man, I
Clearly.
don't even
Clearly.
yeah, so yeah, they're probably already in the works as far as that, and it just depends on where they're gonna
Where they
land
gonna
up at.
land? Yeah. So what we last time we talked about you. We talked about Jaden. What did your wife think of the Michigan trip? And what did she think of this, or both trips, as a matter of fact?
She loves it. And that's what I was gonna say. She loves it.
Okay.
I mean that in itself, I know it's short to the point, but I mean, um, she loved it. I mean, I can't say anything else. She enjoyed every bit of it. I mean, hell, it was babysitting my damn son, man. I mean, my my 5-year-old had his own little. I thought we were gonna have to put her on the plane and bring her back.
So how did I saw the pictures on Twitter, man. How did the Jawan thing come about?
It was sent down, and I guess Paige, she was walking around. She was one of the recruiting assistants, and Jaden got introduced. Then I know Chase wanted to meet him, and I called Chase, and he went over there and talked to him, and it just blew up from there, So it wouldn't it just happened to be that way. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that was pretty cool, man. I grew up in the era of the Fab Five and watching Jawan and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Okay. So what's next for you guys? I know he's been to UNC. Now he's been to Michigan. You guys got any other stops that you're gonna make here in the coming weeks and months?
yeah, we're still trying to put that up together. But no, I know it's in the horizon to try to make it back up there for another game, and then really take a look at places that he has interest in or potential location that we want to see as a family. So
Mm-hmm. Season wise, I mean, I was obviously at the opener, but how have things going since then?
oh man, you missing the show.
Oh, it's like that, huh?
Yeah, it's a bye week this week, but yeah, you missing the show. I think he threw for like over 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns. Um, Took the team on a drive, on a game-winning drive with the 2-point conversion. I mean, yeah, it's been a ride, man.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fantastic. That's fantastic, man. I'm gonna have to make it back down to a bigger game, because those dudes week one, they just
yeah,
they wasn't ready.
just screen pass, but Yeah, the game after that one, when we played Weddington, there's a powerhouse school. We did it to them. I mean, hell, he lit them up. And then Charlotte Christian Catholic, yeah, that was a tough game. It's a wing team, so he passed all that game, man. It was it was an ugly game, fumbles and stuff like that. But they were still able to pull out the win. You know, he drove them down the field with a minute and 27 seconds left, and then threw a dart in the end zone, and we won the game.
Sounds like it is a movie, as they say. Man, this dude, they putting up video game stats in some of these games. So
yeah, it's a show, man. Those kids, man, they and truly like playing around each other. So.
All right, so that was Mr. Jaden Davis, guys, or Mr. Jeremiah Davis, father of Jaden Davis, guys, who, you just got to be encouraged. Don't let up. Don't stop doing what you're doing if you're Michigan, because you're in really, really good shape. And I feel like this recruitment isn't going to go deep into next year, which is what it seemed like at one point, or deep into the summer. Next year, which is what it seemed like at one point. I feel like, just my opinion, this is not a statement from Jaden or his dad or anyone in his family. It's just a vibe that I'm getting, that especially so he can have the greatest impact on recruiting possible, that, I could see this, midwinter, early spring, if that. Maybe it's when the calendar turns. But the real thing, when I went down there to talk to him, that he opened up about, as far as timeline is concerned, that he is not married to a particular time frame anymore, which is what he was before, where he's like, it's going to be next summer sometime. So that's another, I think, positive for Michigan. But we need to get out of here. Be on the lookout for some updates on the basketball side of things as the coaches were out on the road. Steve, I know you profiled that on the site. You had you talked about Elmarco Jackson being visited. That was Phil Martelli, who, by the way, we talked to the King of Philly. I'm going to put that interview up. You got to love Phil Martelli. He is a blast to interview. You had Howard Isley down in Atlanta today, seeing Christian Anderson, of course, the commitment, but also seeing Isaiah Collier, the number one player in the country. Not just the number one point guard, number one player in the country. You had Sadie Washington out west in Arizona, seeing Zayden High and some other prospects out there as well. So a lot to look forward to. And, of course, Steve, big visit weekend for Michigan, having one of the top defensive targets on their board on campus for an official this weekend, right?
Yeah, so Chris Peele is back. Big, huge visit, right? Again, I think we've kind of gotten to the point where we've properly hyped Chris Peele up. I still don't think he's getting enough attention nationally, but a longtime top target. You talk about Jaden Davis, talk about the Providence Day school connection there. Michigan has made that school a major priority. I think we'd argue that probably Chris Peele and Jair Hill are still the top two cornerback targets on Michigan's board. And they're still kind of quietly battling for both of those guys too. Both kids seem very quiet and keep things close to the vest. So big visit for Michigan with Peele, because I think he's going to decide sometime, not in the too distant future. So this will probably be their last shot with him on campus, right? So big visit for Michigan. Really one of the more underrated visits of the next couple months, because corners are what they're looking for in this cycle, and he's been a guy that's been near at the top of their board the entire class.
Huge visit from that standpoint, Steve. He told me this is his last visit, and that when did I go down there? It was like was it the end of August or early? I can't remember. Anyway, it was mid-August. All right, so he said Michigan would be his last visit, and that he would make his decision probably by the end of the month. So that means a decision in the next couple of weeks, and the last impression made on him will be Michigan. So we'll see. That is a big one, and we certainly will have updates for you over on the MichiganInsider.com. If you like this podcast, Be sure to rate it. Be sure to review it. Be sure to tell all your friends about it. And don't forget, join us over on the MichiganInsider.com. That is the place where it all goes down. Message board is outstanding. The coverage is outstanding. You hear the previews from Alejandro. Zach Shaw is a beast when it comes to content production on this team. Best recruiting team in the land. We get it done over on the MichiganInsider.com. And $1 get you in your first month, become a full paying member. Then you get a chance to also not just enjoy all of the benefits of membership 24/7 Sports, you also get Paramount Plus as well. You cannot beat the bang for your buck over on the MichiganInsider.com. That'll do it for us this time on another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider.